Good morning. My name's Chris Scrivens and I'm the pastor at the Community Presbyterian Church in Chester, New Jersey. And this is the worship sermon recording for Sunday, May 24th, the 7th Sunday and last Sunday of Eastertide. We begin with a reading from the book of Acts, beginning in chapter 1. So when they had come together, they asked him, "Lord, is this the time when you will restore the kingdom of Israel?" He replied, "It is not for you to know the times or periods that the Father has set by his own authority, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in all of Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth." When he had said this, as they were watching, he was lifted up, and a cloud took him out of their sight. While he was going, and they were gazing up toward heaven, suddenly two men in white robes stood by them. They said, "Men of Galilee, why do you stand looking up toward heaven? This Jesus, who has been taken up from you into heaven, will come in the same way as you saw him go into heaven." Then they returned to Jerusalem from the mount called Olivet, which is near Jerusalem, a Sabbath day's journey away. When they had entered the city, they went to the room upstairs where they were staying. Peter and John and James and Andrew, Philip and Thomas, Bartholomew and Matthew, James son of Alphaeus and Simon the Zealot, and Judas son of James. All these were constantly devoting themselves to prayer, together with certain women, including Mary the mother of Jesus, as well as his brothers. Brothers and sisters of God, this is the word of God. Thanks be to God. I'm a lectionary preacher, and I've said this to you before, and some of you have heard it, and some of you know, oh, I know exactly what that is. But for those of you who don't, or those of you who aren't quite sure, the lectionary is a programmed reading of scripture texts. It's quite old. It's been around for quite some time, and in a 3-year cycle, it touches on every book of the Bible. It's nice because it follows the church calendar, the church year. These are readings for just after Easter, which is kind of a neat thing, the end of Eastertide, and both of the readings, the second one, which I'll read later, talk about the coming of the Spirit, which we celebrate at Pentecost, which is next Sunday, the 31st, I believe it is. Yeah, 24/7, 31st. So they follow the church year and they go through various parts of the church calendar, which is really nice. It's something that as a pastor I'm not bound to. I can preach from it or not preach from it depending upon the circumstances, but it forces me to get out of myself at times. It forces me not to get hung up on certain themes or certain passages and preach just from those. Although if I wanted to, I could. So in this 3-year cycle, every week there's a list of 4 or 5 readings from various parts of the Bible. And in the 3-year cycle, every book in the Bible is touched upon, not necessarily read through all the way. So it forces me to read some things that I might not read. It also forces me to, I shouldn't say forces me, it's kind of a negative term. It gives me the challenge of wrestling with and engaging texts that either I might just otherwise dismiss out of hand, or other ones that I might say, there's not a lot there that I can preach from this week. I'm going to go on to something else. That's kind of where I am this week. There have been a lot of things that have been in all of our minds lately with this quarantine and lockdown, and now where we in the northeastern United States are starting to see a little bit of, not a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, a good bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and it's coming. It's not here yet, but it's coming, and we're getting a taste of it, and I think there's a sense in which I and others around me that I've spoken to are getting a little anxious. We've been in this time for a long time. We're ready for something new. We're ready for a new normal, because the new normal that we've been living under is difficult in a lot of ways, and I think in a lot of ways we're stressed in ways that we can't put our fingers on. I mean, we in America, in the Northeast United States, in northwestern New Jersey, in Morris County, one of the wealthiest, 10 wealthiest counties in the entire country. We are no strangers to stress of various types, but stress has a face. It's the devil we know. It's overwork. It's being too busy. It's spending too much time hiding from other things by embroiling ourselves in our work. And yes, I'm speaking for myself at times too. I'm not immune to any of this stuff. But we're used to being busy. We're used to having busy calendars. We're used to having more things come up, and then we go through the juggling act of what are we going to rob from Peter to pay Paul, to use a biblical allusion. So we're used to having a lot going on, and there has been a lot going on, but it's all kind of new stuff. It's stuff that we're not used to. And also at the same time, there's been not a lot going on. Our options are very, very limited. And we're not used to that. Let's face it. We are spoiled, rotten brats with not having options. We're used to getting everything we want when we want. We're used to having a variety of shipping options. We're used to having the disposable income that if we want something right away, we can pay extra to get it shipped very quickly. None of that works now. The world is in turmoil, and we are all bearing a brunt in various ways. Most of the problems that we have are considered first world problems, and that's very true. So there is a lot to think about, there's a lot to deal with, there's a lot of newness. So there's a lot to say as a pastor, as a preacher, but these scriptures provided very little in terms of inspiration for me this week. Sometimes I read the text, I'm like, ooh, I'm going right to that one, and I could read the text once and probably preach it. More often than not, I read the text a bunch of times, maybe some different translations. I'll look up different words that are used because they stand out as being peculiar or peculiar turns of phrase, and try to dig into the meat of what's there. And a lot of times it's very prolific. It's very productive, and what comes out of it is truly abundant. But these texts this week are very simple. They're very descriptive. This book of Acts, and especially this is the beginning of Acts. Acts is kind of a continuation of the Gospel of Luke. Luke and Acts were originally one document that was a continuation of another. Although in our biblical canon, in our book list, it's split up with the Gospel of John in between, before we get to the Acts of the Apostles, meaning what these disciples that become apostles, these learners that become the doers and teachers, what they do. Their acts, quite literally, actually, what they are going to do. And this beginning of Acts is this time where, Jesus was risen, is risen. Jesus rose on Easter Sunday, and he appeared to them at various places and times. We read about the return of Christ to the disciples, although Thomas wasn't there, doubting Thomas, my favorite disciple. And then he returned again just for Thomas to deal with his particular issues and questions and queries. The road to Emmaus, which is a wonderful, wonderful story where Jesus appears to two disciples who are walking on the road to Emmaus. They're just kind of getting out of the town. We don't know why they're going there, but the more important thing is not their destination, but it's the journey that they took with the risen Jesus, who they did not recognize for a while. Jesus on that journey got them to explain all that they knew. Jesus helped them process all of this stuff, all of this turmoil that they'd been through, all of this disillusionment, and trying to live into and understand their new normal, which was only really new from their perspective. It was, in the mind of God and in the understanding of Jesus from the very beginning. As much as Jesus tried to explain to them, they just didn't quite get it. But that's the way we are as disciples. So we're going through this, and it's very simple kind of descriptive stuff that Jesus is with them. And he tells them, you know, I'm going away now. I've been with you long enough, but I'm sending someone to be with you, and that's a little mysterious. You know, I'm sending the Spirit that will be with you all of the time. And he gets taken up into heaven, bodily, visibly, and these two angels, these two messengers, angeloi, the plural of angels in Greek simply means messengers. These messengers say, why are you standing so astonished? I mean, you should learn to be astonished by this Jesus, and you should also learn that no matter what weirdness happens with him, no matter what strange stuff happens to you as you follow him and you learn about him and you try to do the things that he tells you to do, remember that he's always got it all in hand. And that's the lesson that you need to learn now, is that Jesus has got all of this in hand. Yes, he was crucified, he died, he was resurrected, he came back. You all thought things were hunky-dory. He's gone away again, but he's coming back. He's coming back in the same way that you saw him leave. So we're still living in that coming back time, we disciples. We so oftentimes fall into the trap of Jesus being this past event. But it's not. It's current events, it's future events, it's promised events. Things promised by God about what will be happening, and you know, we're still waiting for that. Or maybe we're not. I mean, we're told that we should be waiting for that, for Jesus to come back in the same way that these disciples saw him go. But I think sometimes we forget. We get so wrapped up in other things. We go through the motions of going to church. We know church is a good thing. Sometimes we don't quite know why. We donate our money. We donate our time. We realize that the more we're in it, the more we do, the more we are at church doing things with one another, the more we realize the value of church, the value of discipleship. Because being together, being with one another, wrestling with these scriptures that don't seem to have a lot of golden nuggets in them. This one seems kind of historical and descriptive. But the more we deal with these, the more we wrestle with these, the more it changes us as disciples, the more we develop inwardly in our spirit and our spiritual life, and then that changes the way we deal with one another, we deal with the world. It's like each week we go to worship and we're together and we have these times of singing and praying and catching up and simply being in that environment. And it's kind of like taking off our glasses that we wear all week long that are just covered with the muck and crud of daily life and all of the things that we think are important for us to do, the things that we do that we think make us important. We come Sunday and we're covered with all of that. And Sunday and church is kind of like a day of taking off those glasses, taking the hem of Jesus's garments, wiping those glasses clean and putting them back on so that for a blessed short time, we can see clearly again. We can see what's important. We can understand the simplicity of the gospel. We can understand the vitality and the vital nature of being in community together as Christ's church. So while each of these very different disciples has been interacting with Jesus all along in different ways from their own perspectives, has processed the trial and beating and crucifixion and resurrection, and then these 40 days since the resurrection until this very moment in the Acts of the Apostles where Jesus is taken up. Each of them processes that in a very, very different way, which is perfect. That's part of God's plan, that we're all different and we all have different perspectives because we're all called to deal with people that, for better or worse, are kind of like us. We're going to speak those languages, those voices, even though we might all be speaking English to other people. We're speaking English in a way that will reach certain people, where other people might not be reached by the same message. So Jesus gathers all of these strangely varied and strange people together. And I'm not talking about Community Presbyterian Church on Sunday, although I kind of am. Any church, any Sunday. Gathers these disciples together from wherever they are. And then here at the leaving, when he goes up into heaven, they're gathered again. That's one of the beautiful, simple things that hit me about this text. Is that after all this turmoil, after this 3-year journey or so, and we think of each of their journeys. We think of the fishermen who were called away from their nets. We think of Peter, who denied Jesus 3 times, who was the one who had never, ever denied Jesus. One of the most stalwart, staunch supporters of Jesus, out of his fear, denied him. That was crushing for him. The tax collector, Mary of Magdala, cast in the scriptures as a woman of ill repute. Mary, the mother of Jesus. All of these people are gathered together again here at what is an end. Jesus is being taken up into heaven. Promise that he'll be coming again. But it's a significant turning point for these folks. But what do? At the end of all of this, they go back to the upper room where they were staying, and they simply gather together. It's a beautiful, simple message. It's something that I personally wish we could be doing this Sunday. And I hear from you, I see you, I know that that's on the hearts of many too. Is that we're weathering this storm, let's face it, relatively easily compared to much of the rest of the state, just east of us in the more densely populated areas of New Jersey. We're weathering this storm fairly well. And we genuinely don't have a whole heck of a lot to complain about, and some of you will argue with me, and I understand. There are a lot of loved ones that are sick that we can't visit. There are a lot of loved ones who are dying that we can't visit. And in a month from now, when we're able to visit and get back together again, hopefully, we'll look back and say, why couldn't we be where we are now back then when I needed to be with these people? But we miss one another. That's the short and simple and very concise message, is that we miss one another extraordinarily. We miss being in community and being that church in that way. And today we're given this glimpse from this book of Acts of the disciples being together in a difficult and confusing situation. And we lament not having that. We might be angry at God for not having that, and that's okay. God can take that. You know, being angry at God is still being in communication with God. It's still being prayerful with God. So we can't be together, but we can be together this way. You can see me, I can see you at coffee hour or any of the various Zoom meetings that we have, as long as they're working. Didn't work last week. But we have ways of being together, and that is beautiful. So we're given today a simple glimpse of the way things have been. We appreciate the times that we've been together. And at this time in our own personal history, we can kind of look forward and sort of see when we might be together again. It's going to be different for a while. It's going to be probably a couple of years that things are going to be very different. But we'll get there. We'll get there. But for now, we're reminded of Jesus being with his disciples. We're reminded of this gift of the Holy Spirit that is with us at all times. We celebrate that next week with Pentecost. But I want to read you our second scripture for today that comes from Peter's letter to the church. Remember Peter, the big, bold, brash fisherman that said he would never leave Jesus. He said he would be always with him. He had his foibles, he had his failures, as we all do. But it's wonderful to read these letters of Peter and hear and think of Peter as the big, strong, bold disciple who was always jumping out in front of Jesus, defending him, watching out for him, being the first into the action. And to hear these beautiful words. And I think both of these texts are truly God-given through this lectionary for us this week. And I'm going to read this and just simply let it speak to you. Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal that is taking place among you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. But rejoice, insofar as you are sharing Christ's sufferings, so that you may also be glad and shout for joy when his glory is revealed. If you are reviled for the name of Christ, you are blessed, because the Spirit of glory, which is the Spirit of God, is resting on you. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that he may exalt you in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you. Discipline yourselves. Keep alert. Like a roaring lion, your adversary, the devil, prowls around, looking for someone to devour. Resist him, steadfast in your faith. For you know that your brothers and sisters in all the world are undergoing the same kinds of suffering. And after you have suffered a little while, the God of all grace, who has called you to his eternal glory in Christ, will himself restore, support, strengthen, and establish you. To him be the power forever and ever. Amen, amen, amen.